My phone lit up at 5 a.m. with a message from my sexy unpaid intern, Lily. This is not unusual. Lily operates on the sleep schedule of a woman who has personally decided that rest is something that happens to people who aren't tracking government corruption for newsletter subscribers. The message was a meme. A construction worker in his gear, sitting on a couch with his head in his hands, a woman beside him looking worried, and the caption, "You okay, babe? You don't look excited for another 55-hour work week where 40% of your pay is stolen by child-eating pedophiles." I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling of my undisclosed location, which may or may not be a converted storage unit, but that's neither here nor there. I am a former web developer turned independent investigative journalist. I got into this field because I believed that information was the antidote to power. That if you told people the truth with enough receipts, something would change. And I lay there in the dark, thinking about that construction worker and what it means to live in a country that is, and I am going to say this plainly because plainly is all we have left, functionally governed by people whose names appear in the files of a child sex trafficker who did not kill himself. Speaking of Jeffrey Epstein, whose death was staged with all the subtlety of a community theater production of Hamlet, the media has never once mentioned his second island on television, ever, in the entire history of this story, which tells you everything you need to know about who owns the media and what they are protecting. I thought about how tired I am of watching people argue about pronouns while literal pedophiles run the Treasury Department. And then I thought about stockades. The part where your ancestors were actually smarter than you think. Before prisons ate your paycheck like a financial piranha with excellent marketing, communities dealt with wrongdoers through something so psychologically precise that we abandoned it, specifically because the people in power found it too effective against them personally. Public shaming. You broke the community's trust. You stood in the town square in a wooden frame that locked your head and hands in place. And every person who walked past you knew exactly what you had done. They could say it to your face. They could throw things. Historically accurate things, like rotten vegetables and social disapproval. The baker whose bread you stole, the woman you harassed, the neighbor you swindled, everyone got to look you in the eyes and name it out loud. When your ancestors already invented cancel culture. And then you went home. No prison sentence costing taxpayers more than a Harvard education. No removal from the sight of the people you wronged. You stayed in the community. You had to live with what you did visible on every face that looked at you, like a scarlet letter, but with more tomatoes. Shame, it turns out, is neurologically devastating in a way that incarceration simply is not. Prison removes you from the social world. Shame weaponizes it. The human brain is wired to prioritize social standing above almost every other survival need, including, apparently, the need to not fly to private islands for unspeakable purposes. Humiliation in front of your community triggers the same neurological distress as physical pain, except it costs nothing and doesn't require a corrections officer pension fund. The powerful figured this out faster than you can say billionaire tax exemption. It is not an accident that we moved away from public shaming and toward private incarceration right around the same time that the people being shamed started to be wealthy enough to afford lawyers who went to the same schools as the judges. Prisons can be managed. Public memory cannot. Unless you control the platforms where public memory lives, but we'll get to that. The names we are not saying loudly enough. There is a list. You know there is a list. The Epstein files contain the names of presidents, prime ministers, billionaires, celebrities, and sitting members of governments across the Western world. Men who flew on planes to islands where children were trafficked like livestock in a system so organized it had frequent flyer miles. I am going to say something here that will make my remaining corporate advertisers flee like tourists from a timeshare presentation. The documented connections between Epstein's network and broader occult practices point to rituals that go so far beyond simple abuse that the word abuse stops being adequate. This is not new. This is ancient. This is the thing every fairy tale encoded in language a child could memorize, because the people doing it controlled the official record, and burning it into story was the only way to make sure someone would recognize it when they saw it again. 40% goes to people who think pizza has a basement.
Hello out there in internet land. I'm Lily, the editor at The Wise Wolf, and I just wanted to steal a moment of your time to urge you to subscribe to our god-awful channel. Otherwise, my professor is going to press charges for breaking into his office to shoot this clip. Thanks. Bye now.
And we are arguing about RINO and TDS and WOKE. Those words did not emerge organically from the population, like dandelions or a genuine grassroots movement. Language like that gets seeded by accounts that exist to keep your attention pointed anywhere except at the flight logs. You cannot simultaneously be furious about a politician's voting record and be reading Epstein documentation. You only have so much outrage, and they know that better than you know your own Netflix password. The most sophisticated propaganda operation in human history is not making you believe false things. It is keeping you busy believing irrelevant ones. Speaking of ancient things that are not actually ancient history, witchcraft is now the fastest growing religion in the world. Not Christianity, not Islam, not even yoga with wine, though that's a close fourth. Wicca and its adjacent practices, the direct spiritual descendants of the traditions that produced the rituals Jack Parsons performed in the Mojave Desert in 1946, the traditions that Aleister Crowley systematized like a supernatural filing cabinet. You were told these were fairy tales, bedtime stories, the imagination of people who lived before Netflix, and therefore had nothing better to do. What if they were warning labels? What if the people in every generation who understood what was actually happening encoded the knowledge in stories simple enough for a child to memorize and carry forward? Because the people doing these things controlled the official historical record, and the only way to preserve the truth was to make it a story everyone knew. Plot twist: Hansel and Gretel was investigative journalism. I am a self-taught researcher with no fancy degrees and no institutional backing. My credentials consist of spite, black coffee, and reader tips, so I will be careful. I will say this: the convergence of documented elite participation in child exploitation networks, the documented rise of occult practice among the powerful, and the documented content of the Epstein files describing practices that my journalism professors would have told me were outside the bounds of serious reporting is something I cannot explain away. My journalism professors also think the Warren Commission report was a thorough investigation. Shame is free, and we have forgotten how to use it. We are not powerless. We have been convinced we are powerless, which is like being convinced that fire is wet by someone who really needs you to stop noticing all the smoke. The construction worker in that meme is not powerless. He is distracted. He is exhausted from working 55 hours and watching 40% disappear into a system that feeds people whose idea of a good time involves private islands and activities that would make medieval torture devices seem quaint. He is being handed a menu of approved grievances to choose from, so that his legitimate fury gets aimed at his neighbor instead of at the people who built the system that is eating him alive. The weapon his ancestors used was shame, not violence, not revolution, which is expensive and bloody, and usually just replaces one set of criminals with another set that went to better schools. Shame. Public, persistent, named, documented shame. The kind that follows a person to every dinner party, and every press appearance, and every time their name is searched. The kind that the internet was supposed to make impossible to escape, until we somehow allowed it to be defanged by the very platforms the shameful people own. Say the names, share the files. Do not let the conversation get redirected to whatever new acronym is being focus grouped this week to keep your eyes off the list. When someone tries to redirect you, name what they are doing out loud. That is also shame. That is also the weapon. Distraction level, expert. The stockade worked because it made the wrongdoing visible and kept it visible, like a historical receipt that couldn't be deleted. We have the greatest visibility machine in human history sitting in our pockets. We are using it to share cat videos while the people in those files go to charity galas and accept humanitarian awards. I lay in the dark at 5 a.m. thinking about the construction worker and his 55 hours and his 40% and the people that money is feeding. And I thought, the only thing these people are genuinely afraid of is that enough people will know their names and what they did and refuse to look away. So look, and then make sure someone else looks too. Because the stockade only works if people actually show up to throw the historically accurate vegetables. Help keep the wise wolf howling.